Come nearer to the fire, if only in the mind. The world is loud enough already, and most of its noise is only fear wearing shoes. We will speak plainly, because plain speech is sometimes the last mercy left to old men and tired pilgrims. Over these talks, we have examined a difficult question. We have looked at how Zen arrived in the West. We have looked at how practice becomes performance, how posture becomes identity, how silence becomes authority, and how institutions drift while still calling themselves faithful. We have looked at how Zen, once fierce and unsettling, can be softened into therapy and sold as relief to a civilization that badly needs relief, but often has no appetite for truth. Some who heard these examinations may have been uncomfortable. That is not a defect. Discomfort is often the first honest guest to arrive after the flattering ones have gone home. Others may have felt confirmed in suspicions they carried quietly for years. Still others may have wondered whether anything remains after all this cutting and sorting. That is the right question. If Zen has been romanticized, commercialized, institutionalized, psychologized, polished, diluted, translated, mistranslated, repackaged, and passed through the machinery of modern hunger, what is left? What is Zen still for? And more deeply, what was Zen for from the beginning? Not according to marketing, not according to spiritual influencers standing in front of books they may or may not have read, not according to institutions trying to preserve their buildings, their robes, their schedules, and their authority, not according to those who profit from calm faces and expensive retreats, not according to the sentimental imagination of the West, which has always enjoyed borrowing other people's sacred things and putting them under soft lighting. What was Zen actually trying to accomplish? The answer is simple enough to be missed. Zen exists to end confusion. That is all. It exists to end confusion about what we are. It exists to end confusion about suffering. It exists to end confusion about reality. It exists to end the old human mistake of taking the passing for the permanent, the constructed for the true, the mask for the face, and the face for the one who wears it. Notice what is absent from that answer. Zen is not primarily about relaxation. It is not primarily about stress reduction. It is not primarily about ritual. It is not primarily about meditation. That last statement will trouble some people, naturally. Humans become very protective of their furniture once they have arranged it in the temple. Meditation matters. Sitting can matter. Silence can matter. Discipline can matter. But none of these is the destination. They are tools. They are boats. A boat is not the shore. A lamp is not the dawn. A finger pointing at the moon is not the moon, no matter how reverently one polishes the finger. Somewhere along the way, many forgot this. The method became the goal. The posture became the proof. The vehicle became more important than the journey. The room became more important than seeing. The identity of being a practitioner became more important than the ending of confusion. Zen was never meant to produce better meditators. Zen was meant to produce clear seeing. There is an old tendency in human beings. It is not new, only better dressed now. We take living things and turn them into systems. We take systems and turn them into identities. We take identities and turn them into tribes. Then we defend the tribe with the nervous devotion of men, guarding a locked room they have never entered. This happened to Zen. It happens to everything. It happened to religions. It happened to philosophies. It happened to political movements. It even happened to rebellion, which is why every revolution eventually develops a uniform and a committee. The human mind seems almost unable to resist this process. But Zen was originally aimed directly at that tendency. It was designed to expose it. It was designed to reveal the machinery of identification itself. Not merely this identity or that identity itself. The great question of Zen was never, what should I believe? The great question was, who is the one believing? Not as a clever phrase, not as a philosophical puzzle to decorate the mind, not as something to mutter while avoiding the dishes, taxes, grief, and one's own dishonest habits. It was meant as an actual investigation. Most people spend their lives examining objects. They examine careers, relationships, politics, religions, possessions, bodies, status, memories, injuries, desires, and opinions. They examine the world as if the problem is always out there somewhere, hiding behind other people's foolishness, a convenient arrangement, and one of humanity's more durable hobbies. Very few examine the examiner. Very few stop and ask, what exactly is this thing I call me? The Buddha began there. The Zen masters began there. The tradition begins there, before robes, before temples, before ceremonies, before institutions, before slogans. It begins with confusion, specifically confusion about self. And if modern culture excels at anything, it excels at producing confusion about self. Today, people are encouraged to construct identities, curate identities, broadcast identities, and reinvent identities whenever the old one stops attracting applause. The self has become humanity's largest public works project, badly funded by attention and vanity. We are told to discover ourselves, express ourselves, improve ourselves, heal ourselves, brand ourselves, defend ourselves, announce ourselves. And yet anxiety grows, loneliness grows, alienation grows, confusion grows. Perhaps the problem is not that the self has not been perfected. Perhaps the problem is that the self has not been examined. This is where Zen remains astonishingly relevant, not because it is exotic, not because it is ancient, not because it is Asian, not because it can be made visually attractive with a stone garden, a bell, and a camera angle chosen by someone who believes serenity has a font. Zen remains relevant because the fundamental human condition has not changed. People still suffer, people still cling, people still fear loss, people still build identities and defend them. People still mistake their opinions for themselves, and then wonder why every disagreement feels like a wound. Because these conditions remain, the core question of Zen remains. What are you? Not what tribe do you belong to? Not what ideology do you support? Not what history do you carry? Not what costume has the world handed you? What are you prior to all of that? Here the hopeful part begins, though I do not mean optimism. Optimism is often just denial wearing cheerful shoes. I mean something harder and cleaner. Despite all the drift we have discussed, despite all the confusion, despite institutional failure, and the endless human talent for making a cage out of any teaching, the essential question has not disappeared. It cannot disappear. It can be ignored. It can be buried. It can be wrapped in layers of culture. It can be muffled by ritual, branding, ideology, and institutional habit. But it remains. Every generation rediscovers it. Every civilization rediscovers it. Every sincere practitioner eventually encounters it, because eventually life corners us, age corners us, suffering corners us, failure corners us, love corners us, loss corners us, death corners us, and when life corners us, all the identities we built begin to tremble. That moment is not a mistake. That moment is the doorway. Many people imagine awakening as gaining something. They imagine a special state, a permanent glow, a spiritual certification stamped somewhere behind the eyes. They imagine becoming elevated, serene, admired, beyond difficulty. But what if awakening is mostly losing things, losing illusions, losing certainty, losing false conclusions, losing unnecessary burdens, losing the endless labor of defending an image, losing the need to explain oneself into existence, losing the old habit of mistaking the noise in the mind for the one who hears it? What if liberation is not becoming special? What if liberation is becoming honest? Honest enough to see reality without negotiation. Honest enough to stop pretending. Honest enough to release what was never true. Honest enough to say, this is confusion, when confusion is present. Honest enough to say this is fear when fear is present. Honest enough to stop dressing panic as philosophy and self-protection as wisdom. That possibility still exists. It exists now as it existed 1,000 years ago. It exists outside institutions. It exists outside trends. It exists outside YouTube channels. It exists outside the market, which will naturally try to sell it back to you in installments. Truth does not require marketing. Reality does not require branding. The path remains open, quietly, patiently, without advertisement, waiting for those willing to look. So after these talks, perhaps we can answer the original question. What happened to Zen in the West? Zen adapted. Zen drifted. Zen changed. Zen became many things. Some helpful, some confusing, some beautiful, some disappointing, some necessary, some absurd. This is what happens when anything living enters human hands. We plant gardens and build cages with the same tools. But underneath all of it, the original question remains untouched. What are you? Not as theory, not as belief, not as identity, directly, completely, without escape, without performance, without pretending. And perhaps that is what Zen was always for. Not to make you comfortable, not to make you special, not to make you spiritual, not to make you calm enough to tolerate a life that remains fundamentally unexamined. Zen is still for ending confusion, one honest look at a time. That sounds small. It is not. A single honest look can begin the collapse of a lifetime of pretending. A single clear moment can show that the self you defend so fiercely is a construction, not a master. A single encounter with suffering, without escape, can reveal more than 100 polished lectures. A single question, held without theatrics, can burn through years of borrowed certainty. So do not ask whether Zen has survived by counting temples, teachers, books, retreats, memberships, robes, cushions, podcasts. These may exist, and some may serve, but they are not the measure. Ask whether confusion is being ended. Ask whether people see more clearly. Ask whether practice reveals or protects. Ask whether silence deepens contact. Ask whether meditation opens inquiry or becomes a shelter for identity. Ask whether teachings cut through delusion. Ask whether the question, "What are you?" is still alive. If that question is alive, Zen is not dead. If that question has been buried beneath performance, comfort, status, therapy, institutional self-preservation, and spiritual decoration, then the name may remain while the function has weakened. Names are easy to preserve. Function is harder. Humans love names because names can be printed, framed, inherited, trademarked, argued over, and placed on buildings. Function is less cooperative. Function has to be tested in life. So let the final word be simple. Zen is still for seeing through confusion. It is still for examining the one who clings, fears, believes, performs, defends, and suffers. It is still for cutting through false identity, without hatred for the person trapped inside it. It is still for bringing the mind to the place where pretending can no longer survive. It is still for meeting reality directly. If Zen in the West is to have a future worthy of the name, it will not come from better branding, softer cushions, more exotic imagery, cleverer slogans, or yet another lecture delivered in the voice of a man trying to sound like a mountain. It will come from restoring the function, end confusion. See clearly. Look honestly. Do not mistake the tool for the truth. Do not mistake the identity for the path. Do not mistake calm for freedom. Do not mistake performance for realization. Do not mistake the finger for the moon. The path remains open, not easy, open. That is enough.